The marble floor of the hallway felt like ice beneath my bare feet. It was a strange detail to notice. It was a trivial physical sensation that should have been irrelevant, given that my entire life was about to fracture into 1,000 irreparable pieces. I stood frozen outside the master bedroom door of the home I had purchased with my own money in Louisville. My hand hovered over the antique brass doorknob. I had been reaching out to turn it. I had been reaching out to join my husband and his mother for a casual Tuesday evening chat. Instead, I remained motionless in the corridor, like a ghost haunting my own house. The door was not fully closed. It was cracked open just an inch. A sliver of warm golden light spilled out onto the cold floorboards. Through that narrow gap, the voice of my husband carried into the hallway. It was not a shout. It was not the voice of a man in the heat of an argument. It was casual. It was cruel. It was the tone of a man discussing the weather or a boring day at the office. "That fat hippo disgusts me." The words landed on me like heavy stones. Each syllable was a physical weight that pressed the air from my lungs. I stopped breathing. My hand dropped from the doorknob and hung uselessly at my side. "I am only interested in her fortune," Liam continued. His voice was smooth and devoid of any emotion. I stood there in the silence of the hallway and listened. I felt a cold numbness spreading from my chest out to my fingertips. It was as if my body had decided to shut down to protect me from the shock. "You should see the way she eats, Mother," he said. "It is repulsive." Then I heard a sound that was even worse than his words. I heard his mother laugh. It was that sharp and brittle sound I had grown to recognize over the past 3 years. Eleanor laughed with a conspiratorial delight. It was the sound of 2 predators mocking their prey. "My name is Harper. I am 34 years old. I stood in the hallway of a $2.4 million estate that I owned. I was listening to the man I had vowed to love and cherish describe me as if I were something he had scraped off the bottom of his shoe. I looked down at myself. I looked at the expensive cream silk robe wrapped around my body. I looked at the curve of my stomach beneath the fabric. Size 14. That was the number stamped on the tag inside the collar. It was a number that had haunted me for 15 years. The blood drained from my face. My heart began to hammer against my ribs with such violence that I could feel the pulse in my throat. Yet my limbs felt heavy and useless. I could not move. I could not storm into the room and scream. I was paralyzed by a sudden and overwhelming wave of shame. I looked at my hands. They were not the manicured hands of a trophy wife who spent her days at the spa. They were the hands of a woman who had built a construction and development empire from nothing. I remembered the nights I sat at my desk until 3 a.m, eating cold takeout food because I had a deadline to meet. I remembered the stress that made me reach for sugar because I needed the energy to keep going. I remembered canceling gym sessions to meet with investors. I remembered missing yoga classes to handle crises on construction sites. I had sacrificed my body for my success. I had traded my waistline for the bottom line. I had ignored my health to build the very fortune that Liam was now gloating about. He found me disgusting. The realization made my stomach turn. He was happy to live in the house my stress had paid for. He was happy to drive the luxury sedan my long hours had purchased. He was happy to wear the Italian suits I bought him, but he despised the physical vessel that had earned it all. I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with illness. I felt dirty. I felt foolish. I had let him touch me. I had let him hold me in the dark and whisper that I was beautiful. I had believed him because I wanted so desperately to believe that I could be loved for who I was and not just for what I could provide. The conversation inside the room continued. It shifted from my appearance to the mathematics of their betrayal. "When will you get access to everything?" Eleanor asked. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but in the quiet house I heard every syllable. "Soon," Liam said. "I have been patient for 3 years. The prenup expires in 6 months." I held my breath. The prenuptial agreement. My lawyer Diane had insisted on it before the wedding. It was designed to protect my premarital assets. But there was a sunset clause. It was a clause I had agreed to because I was in love and I wanted to prove that I trusted him. After 5 years or under specific conditions of asset commingling, the strictly separate property would convert to marital property. Liam had done the math. He had been counting the days. In 6 months, I can file for divorce and take half of everything he said. Maybe more if I play it right. I just need to stick it out a little longer. I stepped back from the door. I moved slowly and carefully. I placed my bare feet with deliberate precision to ensure the floorboards did not creak. My world had not just shifted, it had evaporated. The marriage I thought I had was a hallucination. The love I thought I felt was a fraud. The husband I adored was a con artist who viewed me as a temporary inconvenience on his path to wealth. He did not just want to leave me, he wanted to destroy me. He wanted to strip me of the dignity I had worked so hard to build. I looked down at my body again. The shame began to recede. It was replaced by a cold and hard clarity. I was a size 14. I was a woman who took up space. I was a woman who built skyscrapers and reshaped city skylines. I was not a victim. I was a problem he had severely underestimated. He thought I was just a fat and desperate wife who would be grateful for his crumbs of affection. He thought I was too blinded by love to see the knife in his hand. I backed away until I reached the top of the stairs. I turned and walked silently down to the first floor. My hands were steady now. My heart had slowed to a rhythmic and dangerous beat. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. The evening sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It made the kitchen island look warm and golden. It looked like a normal Tuesday evening. It was the last normal moment I would ever have. I sat on the bar stool and stared at the reflection of the room in the dark granite countertop. I was not crying. I should have been crying. A normal woman would be weeping for the death of her marriage. But I was not a normal woman. I was a CEO, I was a strategist, and I had just been handed the most important intelligence report of my life. Liam and Eleanor were still upstairs laughing about the hippo and her money. They did not know that the hippo had heard them. They did not know that the countdown had indeed started. But it was not counting down to his payday. It was counting down to his annihilation. I forced myself to breathe. I sat at the kitchen island and stared at the granite countertop. I traced the veins in the stone with a trembling finger. I needed to ground myself. I needed to find a way to exist in the same space as them without screaming. The silence in the kitchen was heavy and suffocating. It felt like the air before a tornado. Then I heard their footsteps on the stairs. They were coming down. They were descending from the scene of their crime with casual ease. I heard the heavy thud of Liam's loafers and the sharp click of Eleanor's heels. They were talking about a restaurant reservation. They were discussing wine pairings. They were discussing their evening as if they had not just verbally dissected my body and my bank account. I stiffened as they entered the room. My spine locked into a rigid line. I did not turn around immediately. I needed one more second to compose my face. I needed to pull on the mask of the oblivious and adoring wife one last time. Liam walked into my line of vision first. He was wearing a navy polo shirt that I had bought for him at a boutique in Charleston. He looked handsome in that generic and accessible way that had first attracted me to him 4 years ago. He had a soft jawline and blue eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He was smiling now. It was the warm and boyish smile that I had fallen in love with. It was the smile that I had trusted with my life. "Hey, sweetheart," he said. He crossed the room in 3 long strides. He came up behind me and placed his hands on my shoulders. His touch was familiar. It was a touch that used to make me feel safe and cherished. Now it made my skin crawl. He leaned down and kissed my cheek. I flinched internally. The sensation of his lips against my skin was physically painful. It felt like a burn. It felt like he had pressed a hot brand against my face. It took every ounce of my willpower not to recoil. It took every shred of my self-control not to wipe the spot where his mouth had touched me. "We were just talking upstairs about maybe going out for dinner tonight," he said. He kept his hands on my shoulders and massaged the tension there. "I was thinking about that Italian place you like. What do you think?" I looked at him. I looked into his eyes. They were clear and bright. There was no guilt in them. There was no hesitation. He was a sociopath. He was looking at the woman he had just called a disgusting hippo, and he was offering to buy her pasta. The sheer audacity of his performance triggered a memory so sharp it almost doubled me over. I looked at his concerned face, and suddenly I was back in our living room 2 years ago. I remembered the day vividly. I had received an email from a prominent business magazine in Kentucky. They wanted to feature me on the cover as one of the top female entrepreneurs under 40. It was a massive honor. It was validation of everything I had worked for since my father died. I had been ecstatic. I had shown the email to Liam with shaking hands and tears in my eyes. I remembered his reaction perfectly now. I saw it through a new lens. He had not smiled. He had frowned. He had looked at me with a deep and furrowed concern that I had mistaken for love. "Oh, honey," he had said. "Are you sure you want to do that?" I had been confused. I asked him why not. "I just want to protect you," Liam had said. "You know how the media is. They are cruel. They will not talk about your business strategy or your profit margins. They are going to talk about your appearance." He had reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His voice had been soft and dripping with poison. "I just do not want to see you get hurt when people start commenting on your weight," he had said. "You know how sensitive you are about your size. If they put you on the cover in a power suit, people are going to scrutinize every inch of you. Do you really want to expose yourself to that kind of ridicule?" He had made me feel small. He had made me feel like a child who needed to be shielded from the big bad world. He had planted the seed of shame deep in my belly. I had declined the interview the next day. I had told the editor I was too busy. I realized now that it had nothing to do with protecting me. It was gaslighting. It was a calculated move to keep me hidden. He did not want me to shine. He did not want me to see myself as powerful or successful. He wanted me to see myself as fat and fragile. He wanted me to believe that he was the only man on earth who could look past my flaws and love me. He had isolated me by making me afraid of the world. He had clipped my wings and convinced me it was for my own safety. Harper, Liam asked. His voice brought me back to the present. "You okay? You look a little pale." I looked at him and I saw the monster beneath the skin. The heat of the burn on my cheek faded into a cold and deadly resolve. "Actually, I am not feeling well," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. It was too calm. It was too steady. "I think I might be coming down with a migraine." I slipped off the bar stool and moved away from his touch. I needed distance. "You two go ahead," I said. "I think I will just have some soup and go to bed early." Eleanor stepped forward. She was standing by the refrigerator looking tall and thin in her beige cashmere cardigan. She looked at me with eyes that were hard like flint. "Oh, what a shame," she said. She did not sound sorry. She sounded delighted. Her voice contained a sliver of triumph. She preferred it when I was absent. She preferred it when she could have her son and my money to herself without having to look at the source of the funds. "Well, we certainly will not let your reservation go to waste," Eleanor said. She checked her watch. "Come along, Liam. We should get going if we want to make the 7 o'clock seating." I watched them. I watched my husband check his reflection in the microwave door. I watched him adjust his collar. He did not offer to stay home and take care of me. He did not offer to bring me tea. He accepted my illness as a convenient excuse to enjoy a night out without having to pretend he liked me. "I hope you feel better, babe," he said over his shoulder. He did not mean it. He did not care if I lived or died as long as the checks cleared. I watched them walk out the door to the garage. I heard the engine of his car start. It was a Porsche Cayenne. I had paid the lease on it last month. I waited until the garage door rumbled shut. I waited until the silence of the house returned. I stood in the center of my beautiful kitchen and felt the paralysis lift. The numbness was replaced by an adrenaline so potent it made my hands shake. The play was over. The curtain had fallen. They thought I was upstairs crying in bed or sleeping off a headache. They thought I was weak. They thought I was the same insecure woman who had turned down a magazine cover because her husband told her she was too fat to be seen. They were wrong. That woman had died in the hallway 10 minutes ago. I was not going to sleep. I was going to war. I woke up at 5:30 in the morning. This was my internal alarm clock. It was the discipline that had allowed me to build a multi-million-dollar corporation before my 35th birthday. Usually, I woke up with a sense of purpose and a mental list of objectives for the day. Today, I woke up with a heavy stone in the pit of my stomach. The room was gray and silent. Beside me, Liam was still asleep. He was lying on his back with his mouth slightly open. He looked peaceful. He looked innocent. In the soft light of the dawn, he looked like the man I had married. He did not look like a predator who was counting down the days until he could butcher my life for parts. I watched him for a long minute. I watched the gentle rise and fall of his chest. I felt a surreal disconnect between the sleeping face before me and the cruel voice I had heard in the hallway 12 hours ago. It was terrifying how easily he wore his mask. He could sleep the sleep of the just while planning to destroy the woman lying next to him. I slipped out of bed. I moved quietly, not out of consideration for his rest, but because I could not bear the thought of him waking up and speaking to me. I could not stomach another lie before I had my coffee. I dressed in my home office attire, which was silk pajamas and a cashmere wrap. I went downstairs to my sanctuary. My office was the one room in the house that was entirely mine. It was filled with blueprints and renderings and the smell of expensive paper. This was where I built things. This was where I solved problems. And Liam was now a problem. I made a pot of black coffee and sat down at my mahogany desk. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dim light. I did not check my email. I did not check the construction schedules. I logged straight into our banking and investment portals. I needed to see the numbers. I needed to see exactly what he was waiting for. I had always managed our finances. Liam claimed he was bad with numbers. He said spreadsheets gave him a headache. I had believed him. I had thought it was a charming quirk. Now I understood it was strategic incompetence. He had wanted me to feel in control so that I would not look too closely at his lack of contribution. He wanted me to feel like the capable manager while he played the role of the supportive husband who just needed a little help. I pulled up the spreadsheet where I tracked my net worth. I looked at the assets column. My property development company was valued at approximately $8 million based on the last quarterly assessment. It was the crown jewel of my life. I had built it from a $50,000 inheritance and sweat equity. The house we were sleeping in was valued at $2,400,000. I had paid the down payment. I paid the mortgage. The deed was in my name. My personal investment portfolio, including stocks and bonds and mutual funds, totaled another $3 million. I had retirement accounts. I had a small collection of art. I had emergency cash reserves. I ran the total. $13,400,000. That was the price tag on my head. That was the number Liam saw when he looked at me. He did not see a wife. He saw a winning lottery ticket that he had to hold on to for just a few more months to cash out. I opened the digital file containing our prenuptial agreement. I had not looked at it since the week before our wedding. My lawyer Diane had been adamant about it. She had drafted strict protections for my premarital assets. But there was a clause. I scrolled down to page 14, paragraph 7, subsection B. It was a sunset clause regarding the definition of separate property. At Liam's request and against Diane's advice, I had agreed to a stipulation. I had been so in love. I had been so eager to prove that I was not a cold-hearted businesswoman. I wanted to prove that I believed in our forever. The clause stated that after a specific vesting period, the barriers between separate and marital property would dissolve. The assets would commingle. If we divorced after that date, everything would be split down the middle. I looked at the date. We were 3 years and 4 months into the marriage. The vesting period was 4 years, but there was a secondary trigger regarding the 4th anniversary filing period, which effectively opened the window in 6 months. Liam had done his homework. He knew the contract better than I did. He knew that if he filed for divorce today, he would walk away with almost nothing because the assets were still shielded. But if he waited 6 months, he would be entitled to 50% of $13 million. $6,700,000. That was his retirement plan. That was why he was enduring the disgust of being married to a fat hippo. He was earning $1 million for every year he pretended to love me. I sat back in my leather chair and felt a wave of incandescent rage wash over me. It was not just about the money. The money was just paper and digits. It was about the theft of my life force. I looked at the empty chair on the other side of the desk. Liam sometimes sat there while I worked. He would sigh and complain about his day at his brother's insurance agency. He would talk about how hard it was to be a man in a world that did not value him. I remembered a specific night last December. I had just closed a massive deal for a commercial complex in downtown Louisville. It came with a signing bonus of $75,000. I had come home bursting with pride. I wanted to open a bottle of champagne. I wanted to celebrate. But when I walked in, Liam was sulking on the couch. He had looked up at me with sad puppy dog eyes and told me he had been passed over for a promotion that went to a younger colleague. He felt like a failure, he said. He felt emasculated by my success. So I had swallowed my joy. I had buried my news. I never told him about the $75,000. Instead, I put the money quietly into savings and I took him out to dinner. I told him the dinner was on a coupon so he would not feel like I was flashing my wealth. I spent the entire evening building him up. I told him he was talented. I told him he was misunderstood. I told him his brother did not appreciate his genius. I had made myself small so he could feel big. I had dimmed my light so he would not feel the shadows. I had walked on eggshells for 3 years, terrified of bruising his fragile male ego. I had hidden my strength. I had apologized for my ambition. I had practically begged forgiveness for being the provider. And it was all a lie. He did not have a fragile ego. He had a voracious appetite. He wasn't intimidated by my success. He was banking on it. Every time I worked late to close a deal, he wasn't lonely. He was calculating his cut. Every time I brought home a bigger paycheck, he wasn't feeling inadequate. He was seeing his golden parachute get larger. I had been feeding the hand that was preparing to slap me. I looked at the spreadsheet again. $13 million. He wanted half. He wanted to take the fruits of my labor and use them to start a new life with a younger, thinner woman who did not disgust him. He wanted to use my money to erase me. I closed the laptop with a sharp snap. The sound echoed in the quiet room like a gunshot. The sadness was gone. The shock was gone. In their place was a cold and calculating fury that felt strangely familiar. It was the same feeling I got when a contractor tried to cheat me or a competitor tried to undercut me. It was the feeling of entering a negotiation I intended to win. Liam wanted to play the long game. He thought he was the only one who knew the rules, but he had forgotten who he was dealing with. I was not just a wife. I was the CEO of a company that crushed obstacles for a living. I picked up my phone. It was 6:15 in the morning. I did not care. I dialed the number for Diane, my shark of a lawyer. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was groggy but alert. "Harper," she said. "Is everything okay?" "It is early." I looked at the closed door of my office. Upstairs, the parasite was still sleeping. "I need to see you, Diane," I said. My voice was steady. "I need to restructure my assets. I need to discuss the prenup, and I need to do it today." Diane paused. The sleep vanished from her voice. "Did something happen?" she asked. "Everything happened," I said. I hung up the phone. I took a sip of my black coffee. It was cold, but I drank it anyway. The balance sheet was about to change. I arrived at Morrison's at exactly 12:15. It was a small bistro near our downtown office. It was the kind of place where the lighting was dim and the booths were high-backed and upholstered in dark leather. It was a place designed for secrets. Sloane was already there. She was sitting in our usual booth in the back corner. She was 52 years old, and she looked like a monarch who had just conquered a neighboring kingdom. She had short gray hair that she wore like a silver crown and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. Sloane was my business partner. She was my mentor. She was the woman who had taught me that kindness in business was a choice and not a weakness. She stood up when she saw me. She did not smile. Sloane never smiled unless there was a signed contract on the table. Instead, she scanned my face with the precision of a radiologist looking for a fracture. "You look terrible," she said. She pulled me into a quick and fierce hug. "You look like you are holding your breath. Sit down. Tell me what is wrong." I sat down. The leather seat was cool against my legs. The waiter appeared with menus, but Sloane waved him away. "Bring us a bottle of the Sancerre," she ordered, "and bring 2 glasses of ice water. We are not ready to order food yet." The waiter vanished. Sloane leaned across the table. Her hands were clasped on top of the white tablecloth. Talk, she said. I told her everything. I started with the hallway. I told her about the cracked door and the cold marble floor. I repeated the words verbatim. That fat hippo disgusts me. I repeated the laughter of his mother. I told her about the countdown to the expiration of the prenup. I told her about the $13 million he was waiting to steal. I spoke quickly. I spoke without emotion. It felt like I was giving a deposition for a case that had nothing to do with me. Sloane listened without interrupting. She did not gasp. She did not cover her mouth in shock. She sat perfectly still. Her expression grew harder with every sentence. It was the face she wore when a contractor tried to double his quote halfway through a project. It was the face of a woman calculating the most efficient way to destroy an enemy. When I finished, I stopped talking and looked at my hands. They were trembling slightly. Sloane sat back. The waiter arrived with the wine. She waited until he poured 2 glasses and left. She took a long sip. That absolute bastard, she said finally. Her voice was low and dangerous. I felt a sudden and overwhelming urge to defend myself. I should have known Sloane, I said. I was so stupid. I let him handle the small things so I could focus on work. I let him convince me that I was paranoid about the money. I let him isolate me. Stop it, Sloane said sharply. Do not dare apologize for his treachery. You did not force him to be a parasite. He made that choice. She took another sip of wine. What are you going to do? She asked. I do not know yet, I said. I need to move fast. I have 6 months before the prenup expires. If he files for divorce after that, he gets half of everything. So you need to file first, she said. It is simple. I shook my head. It is not simple, Sloane. He will fight dirty. He will claim he supported my career. He will claim he sacrificed his own opportunities to manage our home. He will paint me as the cold businesswoman who neglected her husband. I looked down at the tablecloth. I picked at a loose thread. And maybe he is right, I whispered. Sloane set her glass down with a sharp clink. What did you say? She asked. I looked up at her. I felt the tears threatening to spill over for the first time. This was the conversation I was terrified to have. This was the rot at the center of my heart. Maybe I deserve it, Sloane. Look at me. I am fat. I am always working. I am not soft. I am not the kind of woman men write poetry about. I took a jagged breath. Is this just the price of being me? I asked. Is it true that the only reason a man would want me is for my money? Is it impossible for someone like me to be loved for who I am? Am I unlovable, Sloane? The question hung in the air between us. It was the most pathetic and honest thing I had ever said. I was a millionaire CEO asking if I was human enough to be loved. I was suffering from a profound imposter syndrome, not in the boardroom, but in my own bedroom. I felt like a fraud who had tricked a handsome man into marrying her, and now the bill had come due. Sloane reached across the table. She took my hand in hers. Her grip was strong. Her fingers were cool. Listen to me, Harper, she said, and listen close because I am only going to say this once. She looked me dead in the eye. You are not unlovable. You are just surrounded by people who are too small to understand your value. Liam does not hate you because you are a size 14. He hates you because you are powerful. He hates you because you built an empire while he was playing golf. He hates you because every time he looks at you, he sees his own mediocrity reflected back at him. She squeezed my hand. He called you a hippo because it was the only weapon he had. He could not attack your intelligence. He could not attack your success. He could not attack your integrity. So he attacked your body because he knew that was where you kept your insecurities. It was not a critique, Harper. It was a strategy. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I wiped it away angrily. He made me feel so small, I said. He is a thief, Sloane said. He is a grifter, and you are going to show him exactly who he married. She released my hand and picked up her wine glass again. Her eyes were blazing with a cold green fire. You are not just going to divorce him, Harper. That is too easy. That is too merciful. What do you mean? I asked. I mean, we are going to treat this like a hostile takeover, Sloane said. He wants to play the long game. Fine, we will play the scorched earth game. She leaned forward. Her voice dropped to a whisper. 10 years ago, when my husband left me for his secretary, I made a mistake. I tried to be fair. I tried to be amicable. I thought if I took the high road, he would respect me. She laughed. It was a dry and humorless sound. He took the high road and half my pension. He took my dignity. He laughed at me with her while I was signing the checks. Do not make my mistake. Do not be fair. So what do? I asked. You destroy him, Sloane said. You leave him with absolutely nothing. You take the house, you take the car, you take every single penny you can legally claim. You make sure that when he walks away from this marriage, he leaves with exactly what he brought into it, which is nothing but his audacity. But how? I asked. The prenup is tricky. If I move assets, he might claim fraud. Sloane smiled. It was a terrifying smile. Then we get creative, she said. We use the business. We use the trust structures. We make you look poor on paper and untouchable in practice. I know a forensic accountant in Chicago who is a genius at this, and I know you have Diane. Between the three of us, we can restructure your entire existence in 2 weeks. She reached into her purse and pulled out a notepad and a gold pen. We are going to build a war room, she said. We are going to map out every account and every asset. We are going to find his weak points. Does he have debts? I nodded. He likes to gamble, I said. I do not know how much he owes, but I know he goes to the casino almost every weekend. Sloane's eyes lit up. Perfect, she said. A gambling husband is a gift from the gods in a divorce court. It proves financial recklessness. We can use that. We can argue dissipation of marital assets even if we cross the vesting date. She began writing a list on the notepad. Her handwriting was sharp and angular. Here is the plan, Sloane said. Step 1 is intelligence. You need to know exactly how deep in the hole he is. Step 2 is asset protection. We move the liquid cash into the business expansion fund immediately. Step 3 is the house. What about the house? I asked. You sell it? She said. I blinked. Sell it. But I love that house. Do you? Sloane asked. Or do you love the idea of the life you thought you were living in it? I thought about the hallway. I thought about the cold marble. I thought about the voice of my husband calling me repulsive in the bedroom I had decorated with such care. I hate it, I said. I hate every inch of it. Then sell it, Sloane said. Sell it fast, sell it for cash, and put the proceeds into a trust he cannot touch. But he lives there, I said. Not for long, she said. We spent the next hour plotting. We ignored the menu. We drank the wine. We turned my heartbreak into a tactical operation. Sloane did not let me wallow. Every time I started to doubt myself, she pulled me back. Every time I asked if I was being too cruel, she reminded me of the hippo comment. By the time we left Morrison's, the sun was shining, but the air felt different. I felt different. I walked out to my car. I caught my reflection in the window. I did not see a fat woman. I did not see a victim. I saw a CEO who had just approved a demolition order. Liam wanted my fortune. He was about to find out that the fortune came with a bill collector, and she was coming to collect everything. The conference room in Diane's office was a fortress of glass and steel high above the streets of downtown Louisville. It was a space designed to intimidate. The table was a slab of polished mahogany that looked expensive enough to feed a family for a year. The view from the 42nd floor reduced the people below to insignificant ants. It was the perfect vantage point for what I was about to do. I was about to look down on my life and crush the problems that had become too unruly to manage. Diane sat across from me. She was 60 years old and wore her reputation as the most ruthless divorce attorney in the state like a suit of armor. She did not offer me tissues. She did not offer me platitudes about how time heals all wounds. She offered me strategy. We have a narrow window, Harper, Diane said. She tapped a manicured fingernail on the stack of documents between us. The prenup expiration is your deadline, but the restructuring of your company is your shield. If we move your liquid assets into the new expansion trust immediately, we create a layer of protection that will be incredibly difficult for him to penetrate. He will have to prove you did it with malicious intent to defraud him. I looked at the documents. They were complex legal instruments that would effectively lock away the fortune I had built, and if he tries to prove malice, I asked. Diane smiled. It was a cold expression that did not reach her eyes. Let him try. You are a CEO. You are expanding your business into a new market. These are legitimate corporate maneuvers. The fact that they happen to leave your personal accounts empty is just a fortunate coincidence. I picked up the pen. The ink was black. My signature was steady. With every document I signed, I felt another layer of weight lifting from my shoulders. I was building a wall. I was digging a moat. I was turning myself into a fortress that Liam could not breach. I signed the last page and set the pen down. "Good," Diane said. "Now for the ugly part." She pressed a button on her intercom. "Send him in." The door opened and Saul walked in. Saul was a private investigator who looked exactly like what you would expect. He was a man in his 60s with gray hair and a face that had seen every variation of human deceit. He wore a rumpled trench coat that smelled faintly of tobacco and rain. He did not look like he belonged in this pristine boardroom. He looked like bad news walking on two legs. He sat down next to Diane and placed a thick manila folder on the table. He did not say hello. He did not make small talk. He slid the folder across the mahogany surface until it rested directly in front of me. "You need to see this," Saul said. His voice was gravelly and low. I stared at the folder. I knew what was inside. I had hired him to find the rot in my marriage and he had done his job. But knowing the rot exists and smelling it are two very different things. I opened the folder. The first photograph was grainy, but clear enough. It showed Liam standing outside a boutique hotel on the east side of the city. He was not alone. He was standing with a woman. She was young. She was blonde. She was laughing at something he had said, and his hand was resting possessively on the small of her back. I flipped to the next photo. Liam and the woman entering an apartment building. I flipped again. Liam kissing her neck in the front seat of his car. "Her name is Kayla," Saul said. "She is 24 years old. She works as a receptionist at a dental office in the Highlands. He has been seeing her for 14 months. 14 months. I did the math in my head. 14 months meant he had started sleeping with her 6 months after I bought the house. He had been living in my mansion, eating my food, and sleeping in my bed, while he was building a parallel life with a dental receptionist. I picked up a photo of Kayla and held it closer. She was pretty in a generic way. She had long hair extensions and wore heavy makeup. She was very thin. In the photo, she was wearing a crop top and low-rise jeans that showed off a flat stomach and prominent hip bones. I waited for the jealousy to hit me. I waited for the insecurity to rise up and choke me. I waited to feel like the fat hippo compared to this gazelle. But the feeling never came. Instead, I felt a strange and cold pity. I looked at her cheap clothes. I looked at the way she gazed up at Liam with adoring eyes. She looked desperate to be chosen. She looked like a woman who thought she had snagged a rich prize. She had no idea that the man she was dating was a fraud. She had no idea that the dinner he just bought her was paid for by the wife he was cheating on. She was not my rival. She was just a prop. She was an accessory Liam used to stroke his ego because I was too busy working to worship him properly. "Does she know he is married?" I asked. Saul shook his head. He told her he is divorced. He told her his ex-wife was a crazy workaholic who neglected him. He plays the victim very well. I laughed. It was a short and sharp sound. "Of course he does," I said. "There is more," Saul said. He reached into the folder and pulled out a stack of financial documents. They were credit card statements. I recognized the account number. It was a supplementary credit card I had given Liam for household emergencies and groceries. I rarely checked the line items because the balance was auto-paid from my main account every month. I had trusted him. Saul pointed to a series of highlighted charges. "He is not just spending money on dinners and hotels," Saul said. "He is investing in himself." I looked at the charges. $3,000 for a weekend seminar called the Modern Alpha Summit. $2,500 for a course called Personal Branding for the Visionary Leader. $5,000 for custom-tailored suits from a high-end haberdashery in Chicago. $1,500 for a professional photo shoot. I stared at the numbers. My brain refused to process them at first. Liam had spent $12,000 in 3 months on vanity projects. He was buying courses on how to be a leader while his wife ran a multi-million-dollar company. He was buying suits to look like a CEO while I was the one actually signing the paychecks. He is building a brand on Instagram, Saul explained. He poses in the suits. He posts quotes about hustle culture and grinding while others sleep. He has about 5,000 followers. Most of them are bots he paid for. I felt a wave of nausea that was far more violent than what I had felt looking at the photos of the mistress. This was not just infidelity. This was hypocrisy of the highest order. I remembered a Tuesday night 3 weeks ago. I had come home from the grocery store with 3 bags of food. I had bought organic chicken, I had bought organic spinach, and I had bought 2 cartons of organic blueberries. Liam had been in the kitchen when I unpacked them. He had picked up the receipt. $6 for blueberries, Harper, he had shouted. His face had been red with indignation. Are you insane? Do you think money grows on trees? You are so wasteful. You throw money away on this organic garbage just to make yourself feel superior. He had lectured me for 20 minutes about fiscal responsibility. He had shamed me for trying to eat healthy food. He had told me I was bad with money because I wanted pesticide-free fruit. And all the while he was wearing a $5,000 suit that I paid for. All the while he was spending $3,000 to sit in a hotel conference room and have some grifter tell him he was an alpha male. He begrudged me $6 for my health, but felt entitled to $12,000 for his ego. The contrast was so stark it was almost funny, but I was not laughing. I looked at the statement again, the modern alpha summit. He was not an alpha. He was a parasite. He was a leech who latched onto a host and then criticized the host's blood quality while he drained it dry. He screams at me about blueberries, I whispered. What was that? Diane asked. I looked up at her. My eyes were dry. The pity I had felt for Kayla was gone. The sadness I had felt for my marriage was gone. There was only disgust left. It was a pure and cleansing disgust. He screams at me for buying organic food, I said. He tells me I am wasteful. He tells me I do not understand the value of $1. And then he takes my credit card and spends $5 grand on suits so he can play dress up on the internet. I pushed the folder away. He is hollow, I said. There is nothing inside him but greed and insecurity. I thought he was a man. He is just a child playing make-believe with my credit card. Diane leaned forward. And that is why we are going to crush him, she said. A man like that does not survive without a host. When we cut him off, he will wither. Saul cleared his throat. There is one more thing, he said, and this is the part that might actually send him to prison. I looked at Saul. I thought I had reached the bottom of the barrel. I thought there was nothing else Liam could do to surprise me. I was wrong. Show me, I said. The following Saturday evening, I drove to Eleanor's house for the family dinner she had insisted upon. Her home was a sprawling colonial estate in the wealthiest district of Louisville. It was a house that took itself very seriously. It was filled with dark wood and heavy velvet drapes and antiques that were too expensive to touch. It smelled of lemon polish and judgment. I pulled my car into the circular driveway. I sat for a moment with the engine running. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles were white. I took a deep breath. I visualized the armor Diane and I had built. I visualized the trust documents. I visualized the photographs in Saul's folder. I was not walking in as a victim. I was walking in as a spy. I turned off the ignition and stepped out into the humid Kentucky air. Eleanor answered the door herself. She was wearing pearls and a stiff smile that looked like it had been stapled onto her face. "Harper," she said. "You made it. I was worried you might get caught up in one of your little work emergencies." She leaned in to kiss the air next to my cheek. She smelled of expensive gardenias and malice. "I would not miss it for the world, Eleanor," I said. I walked into the foyer. Liam was already there. He was standing by the fireplace in the living room holding a tumbler of scotch. His brother Brody was beside him. Brody was 2 years younger than Liam and possessed the same charm but none of the cunning. He was a man who had coasted through life on his family name and a series of mediocre jobs, Harper, Liam said. He came over and kissed my forehead. His lips were cold. "You look nice." He did not mean it. I was wearing a black dress that I knew made me look severe. I had pulled my hair back into a tight bun. I was not dressing to seduce him. I was dressing for a funeral. We moved into the dining room. The table was set for 4. The china was fine bone porcelain with a delicate gold rim. The silverware was heavy sterling. Eleanor sat at the head of the table like a queen holding court. Dinner was roast beef and potatoes. It was heavy and rich food. Eleanor served me a small portion of meat and a large portion of steamed vegetables. "I thought you might want to watch your intake, dear," she said. "I know how you struggle with your weight when you are stressed." I looked at the plate. It was a calculated insult. It was a reminder that in her eyes I was physically undisciplined. "Thank you, Eleanor," I said. I picked up my fork. The conversation started with the usual pleasantries. Brody talked about his golf game. Liam talked about a fictional deal he was closing at the insurance agency. I nodded and smiled. Then Eleanor turned her gaze on me. "So, Harper," she said. "Liam tells me you are planning a major expansion for your company." "I am," I said. "We are moving into the downtown commercial sector." Eleanor sighed. She cut a piece of beef with precise surgical movements. "It seems like a lot of risk," she said, "and a lot of time. You are barely home as it is. I have to work hard to build something that lasts," I said. "But at what cost?" Eleanor asked. She laid her knife and fork down. "You are 34 years old, Harper. Most women your age are focusing on their families. They are creating a home. They are supporting their husbands. You seem to treat your marriage like a side project that you attend to when you have a spare moment." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. I wanted to slam my fist on the table. I wanted to tell her that my side project paid for the roof over her son's head. I wanted to tell her that my risk funded his lifestyle. But I stopped. I forced myself to swallow the anger. I looked around the table. I looked at Liam, who was staring at his drink. I looked at Brody, who was awkwardly studying the centerpiece. And I looked at Eleanor, who was waiting for me to snap. And suddenly I remembered. I remembered last Christmas. I had spent 3 days shopping for Eleanor's gift. I had tracked down a rare first edition of her favorite novel. I had wrapped it myself with hand-tied silk ribbons. Liam had not even signed the card. I remembered 2 months ago when Eleanor had a health scare with her heart. I was the one who researched the best cardiologists in the state. I was the one who made the appointments. I was the one who drove her to the clinic and sat in the waiting room for 4 hours while Liam was busy at a networking lunch. I remembered every birthday, every anniversary. Every time Liam forgot to call his own mother, I was the one who reminded him. I was the one who bought the flowers and wrote the notes and signed his name so he would look like a good son. I had spent 3 years performing the invisible and exhausting emotional labor that kept this family functioning. I had carried the mental load for 2 grown men who could not remember to buy a stamp. I was the architect of their relationship. I was the glue that held them together. And now she was sitting there telling me I was a bad wife because I worked. She did not know that the only reason her son looked competent was because I was propping him up. She did not know that the only reason she felt loved by him was because I was ghostwriting his affection. It was the trap of kindness. Women are taught that if we are just helpful enough and patient enough and giving enough, we will be safe. We are taught that our labor is the rent we pay for existing. I had paid my rent in full. I had overpaid, and they still wanted to evict me. But tonight, I was done paying. I looked at Eleanor. I saw the challenge in her eyes. She wanted a fight. She wanted me to be the hysterical career woman who screamed at her mother-in-law. She wanted ammunition to give to Liam later. She wanted to say, "See, I told you she is unstable." I decided to disappoint her. I decided to use the very weapon they had used against me. I would use submission. I would use the camouflage of the good wife. I lowered my eyes. I let my shoulders slump slightly. I made myself look small. "You are right, Eleanor," I said softly. The silence in the room was instant. Eleanor blinked. She had been expecting a defense. She had been expecting an argument about modern feminism. She was not expecting surrender. "I beg your pardon," she said. "I said you are right," I repeated. I looked up at her with wide and sorrowful eyes. "I have been selfish. I have been so focused on the business that I have neglected my duties at home. I have neglected Liam." I reached out and touched Liam's hand. He flinched in surprise. "I know I have not been the wife you needed lately," I said to him. My voice trembled perfectly. "I have been distracted. I have been chasing money when I should have been chasing happiness." Liam looked confused. He looked at his mother for a cue. He did not know the script had changed. "Well," Eleanor said. She cleared her throat. "It is big of you to admit that, Harper. I just want to make you happy," I said to Liam. "I want to be the wife you deserve." Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes narrowed. She sensed an opening. She went for the kill. "If you truly feel that way, Harper, perhaps you should ask yourself a difficult question," she said. "What is that?" I asked. "Perhaps you should ask if you are capable of giving Liam what he needs," Eleanor said, "or if it would be kinder to let him go." The air in the room grew thin. It was a direct strike. She was suggesting divorce at the dinner table. She was doing the dirty work for her son. Brody shifted in his seat. Even he seemed uncomfortable with the cruelty of it. "Liam deserves a woman who puts him first," Eleanor continued. "He deserves a family. He deserves children. If your career is your priority, maybe you should stop holding him back. Maybe you should love him enough to set him free." I looked at Liam. He was not defending me. He was studying his scotch glass with intense fascination. He was letting his mother fire the bullets he had loaded. It was a masterclass in cowardice. I took a sip of water. I needed to wash the taste of bile from my mouth. "That is a very wise perspective, Eleanor," I said. I paused. I let the tension build. "I have actually been thinking the same thing," I said. Liam's head snapped up. Eleanor's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "You have?" she asked. "Yes," I said. I sighed deeply. I have realized that things cannot go on like this. Something has to change. I have been looking at our assets. I have been looking at our future. And I agree with you completely. Liam deserves to get exactly what he is worth. I saw a flicker of greed in Liam's eyes. He heard the word assets. He heard the word worth. He thought I was capitulating. He thought I was preparing to offer him a settlement to assuage my guilt. He had no idea I was talking about zero. "I am glad you are being sensible, Harper," Eleanor said. She sounded triumphant. She thought she had won. She thought she had bullied me into submission. "We should talk about this more seriously later," Liam said. His voice was eager. "Maybe just the two of us." "Of course, darling," I said. I gave him a weak smile. "We will talk about everything very soon." The rest of the dinner was surreal. Eleanor was almost pleasant. She thought she had cracked me. She thought I was a broken woman who was ready to hand over her husband and her checkbook. I ate my steamed vegetables. I listened to them chatter. I played the role of the chastised wife to perfection. But inside my head, I was screaming. I was screaming with laughter. They were so arrogant. They were so sure of their power. They thought my kindness was weakness. They thought my silence was surrender. They did not know that while they were eating roast beef, I was mentally drafting the eviction notice. They did not know that the woman sitting across from them was not a wife anymore. She was a sleeper agent in her own life, and she was about to detonate the bomb. The following Tuesday morning, I sat in the conference room of my own company headquarters. The air conditioning was humming a low and steady note. The table in front of me was covered in stacks of legal documents that Diane had prepared with the speed and precision of a military general. We were moving assets. It was a complex financial ballet. We were not hiding money. We were reallocating it. We were taking the liquid capital from my personal accounts and injecting it into a new corporate entity called the Harper Expansion Trust. The stated purpose of the trust was to fund the acquisition of commercial real estate in the downtown sector. It was a legitimate business move. It was a move I had been planning for months, but the timing was aggressive. I signed my name at the bottom of a transfer authorization form. The pen scratched against the paper. It was a satisfying sound. It was the sound of $7 million moving out of reach. Diane sat across from me. She watched every signature with hawk-like intensity. "That is the last of the liquid assets," she said. "Once the wire transfer clears this afternoon, your personal checking account will hold exactly enough to cover household bills and nothing more. The rest is now corporate property. It is locked up in the trust." I capped the pen. I felt a physical lightness in my chest. "And if he checks the accounts," I asked. "He will see a zero balance," Diane said, "or close to it. And if he asks, you tell him the truth. You tell him the company is in a heavy investment phase. You tell him cash flow is tight because you are buying skyscrapers. He will not understand the mechanics of it. He never has." I nodded. It was true. Liam liked the idea of being rich, but he had no interest in the mechanics of wealth. He thought money was magic. He thought it just appeared in the account like water in a tap. I stood up and walked to the window. Below me, the city of Louisville was waking up. I saw cranes on the horizon. I saw the steel skeletons of buildings rising from the concrete. That was my world. I understood steel. I understood concrete. I understood things that were real and solid. My phone buzzed on the conference table. I turned to look at it. It was Saul. I felt a sudden spike of adrenaline. Saul had told me he would only call if he found something urgent. He preferred email for standard updates. A phone call meant disaster. I picked up the phone. "Hello, Saul," I said. "Harper," he said. His voice was grim. It was deeper and darker than usual. "Are you sitting down?" "I am standing," I said. "Tell me, you need to check your secure email right now," Saul said. "I just sent you a file." "It is bad, Harper. It is criminal." I motioned to Diane. She immediately opened her laptop and logged into my secure server. I leaned over her shoulder. The email from Saul arrived with a ping. The subject line was simply, "Urgent evidence." Diane clicked the attachment. A PDF opened on the screen. It was a loan document. I stared at it. I blinked. I leaned closer until my nose was almost touching the screen. It was a promissory note for a short-term, high-interest loan, a hard money loan. The lender was a company I did not recognize, but the address was a known front for a loan shark operation in the west end of the city. The amount was $300,000. The borrower was listed as Liam, but that was not what made my blood freeze. I looked at the collateral section. The loan was secured against a property. It was a commercial warehouse on River Road. It was a property that my company owned. It was a property worth $4 million. I looked at the bottom of the page. There were two signatures. One was Liam's, the other was mine. I stared at my own name scrawled in blue ink. It was a perfect replication of my signature. The loop of the H was precise. The sharp angle of the R was identical to how I signed contracts. If I did not know better, I would have sworn I had signed it myself. But I had not. "I have never seen this document in my life," I whispered. Diane looked at me. Her face was pale. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I am absolutely sure," I said. My voice was rising. "I never authorized this. I never agreed to secure his debts with my company property. This is forgery." I scrolled down to the next page of the PDF. It was a notarized affidavit of ownership. It stated that I, Harper, gave my husband Liam full power of attorney to use the River Road property as collateral. It was fake. The notary stamp was likely fake or bought. The entire document was a fabrication. I felt a sensation I had never felt before. It was not anger. It was not sadness. It was a cold and violent clarity. Liam had not just cheated on me. He had not just used me for money. He had stolen my name. He had taken the one thing that belonged only to me. He had taken the reputation I had built over 15 years of 16-hour days. He had taken my integrity and he had pawned it to a loan shark to pay for his gambling and his mistress. He had put my business at risk. If he defaulted on this loan, these criminals could come after my warehouse. They could tie up my assets in litigation. They could tarnish the brand I had protected with my life. I stepped back from the table. I felt like I was vibrating. Saul was still on the speakerphone. "Harper," Saul said. "Are you there?" "I am here," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to a stranger. It was calm. It was deadly. "He owes $300,000 to the sharks," Saul said. "And he is late on the payments. That is why he is desperate. That is why he is pushing for the divorce settlement. He needs your money to pay them back before they break his legs. Or before they try to foreclose on a warehouse they think they have a claim to." I looked at Diane. She was already typing furiously on her laptop. "This is a Class B felony," she said without looking up. "Forgery in the first degree, theft by deception. If we take this to the police, he goes to prison for 5 to 10 years. I walked over to the window again. I looked at the city. 10 minutes ago, I had been planning a divorce. I had been planning to protect my assets and leave him broke. It was a defensive strategy. It was about survival. But this was different. This was an act of war. Liam had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. He had underestimated me in the most fatal way possible. He thought I was just a woman with a checkbook. He did not realize that my name was my bond. He did not realize that my signature was my honor. By forging it, he had not just committed a crime, he had committed a sacrilege. I turned back to the room. "Diane," I said. She stopped typing and looked at me. "Stop the asset protection plan," I said. She looked confused. "What?" I walked back to the table and placed my hands flat on the mahogany surface. "The protection plan is too passive," I said. "We are not just protecting assets anymore. We are not just playing defense." I looked at the forged signature on the screen. I looked at the lie that wore my name. "We are switching to offense," I said. Diane closed her eyes for a second and then opened them. A slow smile spread across her face. "What do you have in mind?" she asked. "I want to destroy him," I said. I did not shout. I did not scream. I stated it as a fact. "I do not want him just broke," I continued. "I want him terrified. I want him to understand exactly who he stole from. He used my name to buy time. Fine. I'm going to use his crimes to buy his destruction." I looked at the phone. "Saul," I said. "I am here, Harper. Do you have the original files?" I asked. "The metadata. The proof that these are forgeries." "I have everything," Saul said. "I have the notary he bribed on tape. I have the digital trail. It is ironclad." "Good," I said. "Keep it safe. Do not release it yet." "Why not?" Diane asked. "We can go to the police today. We can have him arrested by dinner time." "No," I said. I sat down in the leather chair. I felt powerful. I felt like the CEO I was born to be. "If we arrest him now, he becomes a victim," I said. "His mother will bail him out. He will cry to the judge that he made a mistake because he was under pressure. He will plead down. He will get probation." I shook my head. "I want more than that," I said. I looked at the document again. "He thinks he has 6 months," I said. "He thinks he has time to charm me and manipulate me and wait for the prenup to expire. He thinks he is the one holding the cards." I smiled. It was not a nice smile. I'm going to let him think that I said. I am going to let him think he is winning. I am going to let him think I am the stupid fat wife who is desperate for his love. And then I asked, "And then I'm going to pull the rug out from under him when he is standing on the edge of the cliff," I said. I looked at Diane. "We proceed with the trust," I said. "We proceed with the business restructuring. But we add a new element." "What element?" she asked. "The house," I said. "We are selling the house," I said. Diane nodded. "We discussed this." "Yes," I said. "But now the timeline has changed. I want it sold immediately. I want the cash in the trust before the end of the month." "And Liam?" Diane asked. "He will find out when the locks change," I said. I stood up. The meeting was over. The strategy had shifted. I was no longer just divorcing a husband. I was prosecuting a criminal. He had forged my signature. He had tried to steal my identity. He was about to learn that my identity was not something he could steal. It was something that would crush him. I picked up the loan document and slid it into my briefcase. "Diane," I said, "prepare the final divorce petition, but keep it in the drawer. We are not serving him yet." When Diane asked, "When he has nothing left to lose," I said, "when I have taken the house, when I have taken the money, when I have stripped him of every illusion of safety he has, then we give him the choice." "What choice?" she asked. "Total surrender," I said, "or prison." I walked out of the conference room. I walked past my assistant who smiled at me. I smiled back. She did not know that her boss had just declared war. She did not know that I was carrying a nuclear weapon in my briefcase. I walked to the elevator. I pressed the button for the lobby. I was going to go home. I was going to cook dinner for my husband. I was going to ask him about his day. I was going to let him kiss me with his lying lips. And all the while I would be thinking about the signature. I would be thinking about the $300,000. I would be thinking about the look on his face when the police knocked on his door. He had wanted a rich wife. He had wanted a powerful wife. He was about to find out exactly what a powerful woman does when she is betrayed. She does not cry. She audits, and she liquidates. The house was quiet. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and the silence felt thick and heavy like a wool blanket. I was supposed to be at the office. My calendar said I was in a strategy meeting with the Downtown Development Board. My assistant knew to cover for me. She thought I was at a doctor's appointment. In reality, I was on my knees in the walk-in closet of the master bedroom. I was robbing my own house. The safe was open. It was a heavy steel box hidden behind a false panel in the wall. I had installed it myself 3 years ago. I knew the combination by heart. I spun the dial, left to 32, right to 14, left to 88. The lock clicked with a satisfying mechanical thud. I swung the heavy door open. Inside lay the tangible history of my life before Liam. There were velvet boxes containing jewelry I had bought for myself to celebrate closing major deals. There was the diamond tennis bracelet I bought when I made my first $1 million. There were the pearl earrings my father had given me for my college graduation. There was a sapphire necklace that had belonged to my grandmother. I pulled a black leather travel bag from the shelf. It was an inconspicuous gym bag. It did not look like a vessel for $50,000 worth of gems. I worked quickly. My hands were shaking slightly. I told myself it was just caffeine, but I knew it was fear. I was not afraid of the police. I was not afraid of breaking the law. I was stealing my own property, but I was afraid of getting caught. I was afraid of the questions. I placed the velvet boxes into the bag one by one. I wrapped the loose items in soft cloth. I tucked my passport into the zippered side pocket. I added the original deed to the house and the birth certificates I had retrieved from the safe deposit box earlier that morning. I was dismantling my life piece by piece. I was erasing my footprint in this house. I zipped the bag shut. It was heavy. It felt like a brick of solid gold. I stood up and brushed the lint from my knees. I checked my watch. It was 2:30 in the afternoon. Liam was at the insurance agency. Or rather, he was supposed to be at the insurance agency. In reality, he was probably at the casino or with Kayla. Either way, he would not be home until 6. I had time. I reached for the bag handle, and then I heard it. The sound was low and rumbling. It vibrated through the floorboards. It was the sound of the garage door opening. My heart stopped. It literally skipped a beat and then restarted with a violent thud that echoed in my ears. I froze. I stood in the center of the closet like a deer caught in the headlights of an oncoming truck. He was home. He was 3.5 hours early. Why was he home? Panic surged through me. It was a cold and electric shock. I looked at the open safe. I looked at the black bag sitting on the floor. I looked at the empty spaces on the velvet shelves where the jewelry boxes used to be. It looked exactly like what it was. It looked like a getaway. I heard the car door slam in the garage. I heard the heavy door to the mudroom open and close. I heard his footsteps on the hardwood floor of the kitchen. "Harper," he called out. His voice echoed up the stairs. "Are you home? I saw your car in the driveway." I could not breathe. My mind raced. I needed a lie. I needed a cover story. I needed a miracle. If he came upstairs and saw the bag, he would know. He would ask to look inside. He would see the passport. He would see the deeds. He would realize that the fat hippo was planning a migration. And if he knew I was leaving, the game was over. He would file for divorce immediately. He would freeze the accounts. He would get a court order to stop me from moving assets. He would trap me. I heard his footsteps on the stairs. They were getting closer. I scrambled. I kicked the safe door shut, but I did not have time to spin the dial to lock it. I grabbed the black bag and threw it onto the ottoman in the center of the room. I unzipped it. I had to embrace the evidence. I could not hide it, so I had to explain it. "Harper," he called again. He was in the hallway. "I am in the closet, Liam," I shouted back. My voice was high and tight. It sounded guilty. I cleared my throat. "Come here for a second." I grabbed a handful of jewelry boxes and scattered them on the ottoman. I opened 3 of them. The diamonds sparkled under the recessed lighting. Liam walked into the bedroom. He was wearing his work suit, but his tie was loosened. He looked tired. He looked irritable. He stopped in the doorway of the closet. He looked at me, then he looked at the bag, then he looked at the jewelry scattered on the ottoman. His eyes narrowed. "What is going on?" he asked. The air in the closet felt thin. I could feel the sweat prickling on the back of my neck. I forced myself to look him in the eye. I forced my hands to stop trembling. "I am so glad you are home," I said. I tried to sound relieved. I tried to sound like a wife who needed her husband's opinion. I have been stressing about this all morning, stressing about what Liam asked. He took a step closer. He was suspicious. I could see the gears turning in his head. He was wondering why I was home early. He was wondering why I was packing diamonds into a gym bag. About the insurance, I said. I threw the word out like a grenade. The insurance, he repeated. Yes, I said. I picked up the sapphire necklace. I held it up to the light. I was reading an article in the paper this morning. There has been a string of robberies in the Highlands. They are targeting high-end homes. Apparently they have a list of houses with safes. I watched his face. The suspicion flickered, but it did not vanish. So I called our broker. I continued. I lied faster. I lied with the desperate energy of a drowning woman. I asked him to review our policy. He said we are underinsured on the jewelry. The appraisal values are 5 years old. With inflation and the market price of gold, we would only get half of what these are worth if they were stolen. I dropped the necklace back into the box. I panicked, I said. I know it is silly, but I just got this feeling. So I came home to gather everything up. I am taking them to the jeweler downtown this afternoon. I want a rush appraisal. I want to update the policy by tomorrow. I looked at him. I held my breath. It was a flimsy lie. It was full of holes. Why would I take them in a gym bag? Why did I need to do it today? Why did I look so terrified? Liam looked at the bag. He looked at the diamonds. Then he looked at me. And I saw the change happen. I saw the suspicion drain away. I saw the tension leave his shoulders. And in its place, I saw something else. I saw greed. He did not care that I was home early. He did not care that I was acting strange. He heard the words value and underinsured. He heard the possibility of money. You are right, he said. He walked over to the ottoman. He reached out and picked up the diamond tennis bracelet. He ran his thumb over the stones. Gold is up 20% this year, he said. He sounded like an expert. He sounded like a man who watched financial news while pretending to work. If we lose these and the insurance company pays out on the old value, we are leaving money on the table. We, I thought. He said we. He was already counting my jewelry as his asset. Exactly, I said. I let out a breath I had been holding for 30 seconds. I just want to protect our investment. Liam nodded. He dropped the bracelet into the bag. Make sure you take everything, he said. He looked at the shelf. Did you get the pearl earrings? The ones your dad gave you? Those are Mikimoto. They are worth at least $8,000. Yes, I said. I have them. And my watch, he said. He unclasped the Rolex Submariner from his wrist. It was a watch I had bought him for our first anniversary. It cost $12,000. Take this too, he said. He tossed it onto the pile of jewelry. Get it appraised. It is probably appreciated in value. If we ever need to sell it or claim it, I want the paperwork to reflect the current market price. I stared at the watch. I stared at him. He was handing me his watch. He was helping me rob him. He was so blinded by the thought of maximizing the value of the asset that he did not see the woman stealing it. He was so focused on the hypothetical insurance payout that he did not realize the payout was walking out the door. His greed was his blind spot. It was a gaping hole in his vision. He could not imagine a world where I would leave him because that would mean he lost access to the money. Therefore, in his mind, I must be acting to protect the money. It was logical to him. It was the logic of a parasite. You should tell the appraiser to push the numbers a little high, Liam said. He lowered his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. You know, just in case. If something does happen to them, we want to make sure we come out ahead. He winked at me. I felt a surge of revulsion so strong I almost gagged. He was encouraging me to commit insurance fraud. He was a grifter to his core. That is a good idea, I said. I forced a smile. You are so smart about these things, Liam. That is why I love you. I zipped the bag shut. The sound of the zipper was loud in the quiet room. I better get going, I said. The jeweler closes at 5. Liam nodded. He turned away. He was already losing interest. He had secured the financial potential of the situation, and now he was bored. I'm going to grab a beer, he said. I had a long day. Tyler is being a pain in the ass about the quarterly targets. He walked out of the closet. He did not look back. He did not kiss me. He did not ask how my day was. He just walked away to drink a beer in the kitchen I paid for while I walked out the front door with $50,000 of jewelry and his Rolex. I picked up the bag. I slung it over my shoulder. I walked downstairs. I passed the kitchen. I saw Liam opening the refrigerator. The light from the fridge illuminated his face. He looked content. He looked like a man who had it all figured out. I walked out the front door. I walked to my car. I threw the bag into the passenger seat. I sat there for a moment. My hands were shaking again, but this time it was not fear. It was adrenaline. It was triumph. I had looked him in the eye and lied. And he had believed me because he could not conceive of a woman who was not serving his interests. He thought I was appraising our future. I started the engine. I was appraising his extinction. I backed out of the driveway. I did not look back at the house. I drove toward the city. I drove toward the pawn shop I had researched on the other side of town. I was not going to a jeweler. I was going to turn his Rolex and my diamonds into cash that would go straight into the secret account. Liam wanted the insurance value. I was going to give him the liquidation value. And when the time came to settle the score, he would realize that the robbery had happened right in front of his face, and he had handed the thief the keys. The next morning I called Claire. She was the real estate agent who had helped me acquire 3 of my commercial properties in the last year. She was a shark in a silk blouse. She moved high-end real estate with the discretion of a priest and the ruthlessness of a mercenary. I met her at a coffee shop 3 blocks from my office. I did not want her coming to the house yet. I did not want to risk Liam seeing her car in the driveway. I need to sell my house, I said. I did not offer a preamble. I did not offer an explanation. Claire took a sip of her espresso. She did not blink. Fast, quiet, and at a good price, I assumed. 2 weeks, I said, 3 maximum, and my husband does not know until the contracts are signed. Claire smiled. It was a small and tight expression of professional appreciation. I heard through the grapevine that you might be making some changes, she said. Sloan mentioned you could use some discreet help. Sloan had paved the road. I was grateful. I have 3 buyers who have been looking in your neighborhood, Claire said. They are cash buyers. They are looking for turnkey properties and they want quick closings. They do not care about open houses. They just want the keys. When can I show it? She asked. Thursday, I said. Liam plays golf every Thursday afternoon. He leaves at noon and does not return until 6. You have a 6-hour window. Claire nodded. She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. I will have the listings ready by tomorrow, but I am going to start with my private client list. We will keep this off the public market. No yard signs, no internet listings. It will be a ghost sale. Thursday arrived with a gray and overcast sky. It matched my mood. I kissed Liam goodbye at the door. He was wearing his golf polo and a visor. He looked ridiculous. He looked like a man without a care in the world. Have a good game, I said. I will, he said. He did not kiss me back. He just walked to his car and drove away to spend 5 hours hitting a ball while his wife liquidated his roof. Claire arrived at exactly 2 o'clock. She brought a photographer and a staging consultant. They moved through my house like a SWAT team. They decluttered. They adjusted lighting. They took photos that made my home look like a magazine spread. At 3 o'clock, the first buyers arrived. They were a young couple. The husband was in tech, and the wife was an interior designer. They walked through the rooms with wide eyes. They touched the marble countertops. They admired the crown molding. I stood in the kitchen and watched them. I felt like an intruder in my own life. They loved the house. They saw a future here. They saw dinner parties and Christmas mornings and children running down the hallway. I saw a crime scene. When the buyers left, Claire turned to me. They are going to offer, she said. I can feel it. The market is hot and inventory is low. We will have a contract by the weekend. She left to escort the couple out. I was alone in the house. I walked through the silence. I walked through the living room where I had hosted dinner parties for people I did not like. I walked through the dining room where Eleanor had insulted me. Then I walked up the stairs. I went to the end of the hallway. I opened the door to the second guest bedroom. It was empty. The walls were painted a soft and neutral yellow. The sunlight filtered through the white curtains and pooled on the hardwood floor. This was supposed to be the nursery. I stepped inside. The air in the room felt still and expectant. For 3 years I had kept this room empty. I had told Liam we were waiting until the business was more stable. I had told him we were waiting for the right time. But the truth was darker. I stood in the center of the room and wrapped my arms around myself. I had never filled this room because deep down in a place I refused to acknowledge, I knew I could not bring a child into this marriage. I remembered the pressure. I remembered the way Eleanor would look at my stomach every time I visited. I remembered the way society looked at me. I was a successful CEO, but to the world I was incomplete. I was a woman without a child. I was a garden that had failed to bloom. This house was supposed to fix that. I had bought this mansion because it was what a successful family was supposed to have. It was a stage set. I thought if I built the perfect set, the perfect life would follow. I thought if I had the nursery, the maternal instinct would magically appear. But it was just a room, and I was just a woman who was tired of performing. I looked at the yellow walls. They were not hopeful. They were oppressive. They represented the complete family that Liam used as a weapon against me. He wanted children not because he wanted to be a father, but because he wanted to anchor me. He wanted to trap me in a web of biological obligation so I could never leave. This house was not a sanctuary. It was a golden cage. It was a mausoleum for a dream that was not even mine. I had bought it to prove I was successful. I had bought it to prove I was a good provider. I had bought it to earn love. I realized then that you cannot buy a home. You can only buy a building, and this building was filled with lies. I walked out of the room and closed the door. I closed it on the yellow walls. I closed it on the phantom children. I closed it on the guilt. I went back downstairs. Claire was waiting in the foyer. "I think we have a deal," she said. "They want to offer $2.7 million, all cash. They want to close in 10 days. I looked at the front door. "Take it," I said. "Are you sure?" Claire asked. "You do not want to negotiate. We could maybe squeeze another $50,000 out of them." "I do not care about $50,000, I said. "I care about the timeline. I want out." Claire nodded. She pulled a document from her briefcase. "Sign here," she said. I signed the listing agreement. I signed the acceptance of the preliminary offer. It was done. The house was sold. I watched Claire drive away. I stood in the foyer of a house that no longer belonged to me. Liam would come home in 2 hours. He would hang his golf visor on the hook. He would open a beer. He would sit on the couch and watch television in a living room that was already owned by strangers. He was living on borrowed time. He just did not know that the clock had already run out. I walked into the kitchen and started preparing dinner. I chopped vegetables with a steady rhythm. Chop, chop, chop. I was dismantling my life one vegetable and one contract at a time, and for the first time in 3 years I felt entirely and completely free. The cage was open, and the bird was not just flying away, she was burning the nest down behind her. 2 days before the closing of the house sale, I found myself in the home office searching for a digital ghost. I needed the password for an old vendor account that we had used for the landscaping business 3 years ago. I remembered that Liam had set it up on his old iPad. The device had been sitting in the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet for months, gathering dust, ever since I bought him the new Pro model for his birthday. I pulled the device out. The battery was dead. I plugged it in and waited for the familiar white Apple logo to appear on the black screen. I felt nothing but a mild annoyance at the delay. I had a conference call in 20 minutes and I needed to access the billing history. The screen lit up. I typed in his passcode. It was 1234. It was the code of a lazy man. The device synced with the Wi-Fi. Notifications began to ping. Emails, calendar updates, and a sync notification from the Notes app. I ignored the emails. I went straight to the Notes app looking for the password file. I typed password into the search bar. Nothing came up. I typed account. Nothing. I canceled the search and decided to scroll through the recent notes manually. Most of them were mundane. Grocery lists he never used, golf scores, ideas for business ventures that never materialized. And then I saw it. It was a note titled, "The Exit Plan." I froze. My finger hovered over the glass screen. The timestamp caught my eye immediately. The note had been created 3 years and 5 months ago. That was 1 month before our wedding. I felt a cold prickle of sweat on the back of my neck. I tapped the note. It opened. It was a list. It was a timeline. It was a manifesto of calculated destruction written by the man who was sleeping in my bed. Year 1. The list began. Phase 1. Destabilization. Below that, he had written bullet points. Make her insecure about her body. Comments on weight must be subtle but constant. If she feels ugly, she will be grateful for me. Done. I stared at the screen. I read the words again. Done. He had checked it off like a grocery item. He had deliberately, strategically dismantled my self-esteem. The magazine cover refusal, the comments about the blueberries, the way he looked at other women when we were out. It wasn't thoughtlessness. It was engineering. He had engineered my self-loathing to keep me compliant. I scrolled down. Year 3. The note continued. Phase 2. Isolation. Cut off the friends. Make her feel guilty for spending time with Sloan or the girls. Create drama whenever she goes out so she prefers to stay home. Done. I remembered the fight we had last New Year's Eve when I wanted to go to Sloan's party. He had staged a panic attack. He had claimed he was depressed and needed me. I had stayed home. I had held his hand while he watched football. I had felt like a good wife. I was not a good wife. I was a mark. I was a victim of psychological containment. Year 5. The note concluded. Phase 3. The payday. Prenup expires. Vesting period ends. File for divorce on grounds of neglect. Demand 50% of all assets plus alimony. Freedom plus 50%. I sat back in my chair. The office was silent. The air conditioning hummed. The birds were singing outside the window, but inside my head there was a silence so profound it felt like the vacuum of space. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not throw the iPad across the room. For the last few weeks I had felt a lingering thread of guilt. I had wondered if I was being too harsh. I had wondered if perhaps beneath his greed there was still a man who had once loved me. I had wondered if I was the villain for selling the house out from under him. That thread snapped. It snapped with the violence of a suspension bridge cable breaking under tension. He had never loved me. Not for a day, not for a minute, not for a second. The wedding was a fraud. The vows were a lie. The intimacy was a performance. He had looked at me walking down the aisle in my white dress, and he had not seen a bride. He had seen an investment vehicle with a 5-year maturity date. He had planned to break me. He had planned to make me hate my body so that I would not think I deserved better. He had planned to isolate me so I would have no one to turn to when he finally gutted my life. I looked at the words, freedom plus 50%. He wanted freedom. I picked up my own phone. I opened the camera. I took a photo of the screen. I took a screenshot on the iPad and airdropped it to my phone. I emailed the file to myself. I emailed it to Diane. I emailed it to Saul. I was preserving the evidence of his soul's corruption. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. The pain was gone. The heartbreak was gone. The last remnants of the woman who wanted to be loved were gone. In their place was something cold and hard and incredibly sharp. I was no longer Harper the wife. I was Harper the CEO. And I was looking at a competitor who had engaged in corporate espionage. He wanted 50%. I looked at the screen one last time before I deleted the screenshot from his device to cover my tracks. He was going to get 0%. And he was going to get it with a side order of absolute ruin. I put the iPad back in the drawer. I plugged the charging cable back into the wall. I stood up and smoothed the front of my silk blouse. My hands were steady. My pulse was slow. I was ready. The evening before the closing was surreal in its normalcy. I came home at 6 o'clock. Liam was in the living room. He was lying on the beige sectional sofa watching a baseball game. He had a beer balanced on his stomach. The house was clean. It was staged. The clutter was gone. Liam had not noticed. He assumed I had hired a maid service to do a deep clean. He never noticed the details of the home because he did not care about the home. He only cared about the service it provided him. "Hey, babe," he said without looking away from the screen. "What is for dinner?" I looked at him. I looked at the man who had written, "Make her feel ugly" on a to-do list. I picked up Thai food, I said. I set the paper bag on the kitchen counter. He sat up. He looked happy. He liked Thai food. He liked anything that required zero effort from him. Great, he said. He walked into the kitchen and started unpacking the cartons. He did not ask about my day. He did not ask why I was wearing a suit. We sat at the kitchen island. We ate pad thai out of cardboard boxes. So Liam said. He talked with his mouth full. I have been thinking about what you said, about the business expansion. I took a sip of water. I knew this was coming. What about it, I asked. Well, he said. He put his fork down. He wiped his mouth with a paper napkin. If we are really going to scale up, I think it is time I got involved. Officially. I raised an eyebrow. Officially, I repeated. Yeah, he said. He leaned back. He looked expansive. He looked arrogant. I mean, I know insurance. I know risk management. I could come on as a consultant. Or maybe a partner. You could make me the chief strategy officer. I almost choked on my noodles. Chief Strategy Officer. This was a man who had forged my signature because he could not manage his own gambling debts. This was a man who needed a list to remind him to manipulate his wife. And he wanted to run strategy for an $8 million company. That is an interesting idea, Liam, I said. My voice was smooth. It was the voice I used when I was negotiating with a toddler or a lunatic. I think I could really help, he said. And it would look better for us. You know, as a power couple. It looks weird that I'm just working at my brother's agency while you are building skyscrapers. If I have a title at your company, it solidifies our brand. Our brand. He was already rewriting history. He was already inserting himself into the narrative of my success. You are right, I said. I forced a smile. It was the hardest physical action I had ever performed. It does make sense, Liam beamed. He preened like a peacock. I knew you would see it that way, he said. We can work out the salary details later. But I was thinking something commensurate with an executive role. Maybe $200,000 to start. Plus equity. Equity. He wanted ownership. He wanted shares. He wanted to embed himself into the corporate structure so that even if we divorced, he would own a piece of my blood and sweat. We can definitely discuss that, I said. Why don't we set up a meeting next week? We can sit down with the lawyers and draw up the paperwork. Next week, he said. Perfect. Next week he would be homeless. Next week he would be facing criminal charges. Next week he would be a pariah. But tonight, I let him dream. That is great, babe, he said. He reached over and squeezed my hand. I am proud of us. I looked at his hand on mine. I felt nothing. No disgust, no anger, just the cold observation of a biological fact. A parasite was touching a host. We finished dinner. We watched television. I sat next to him on the couch in the house that belonged to a nice couple named Johnson as of tomorrow morning. At 10 o'clock, we went upstairs. I went through my nightly routine. I washed my face. I brushed my teeth. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked at the woman who had been called a hippo. I looked at the woman who was marked for destruction in year 5. She was gone. The woman in the mirror was a warrior. Her eyes were clear. Her jaw was set. I walked into the bedroom. Liam was already in bed. He was scrolling through his phone. He was probably checking his fake Instagram account. He was probably messaging Kayla. I climbed into bed beside him. I turned off the lamp. "Good night, Harper," he said. "Good night, Liam," I said. I lay in the dark and listened to his breathing deepen. I listened as he drifted off to sleep. I lay there for hours. I watched the moonlight track across the ceiling. I thought about the nature of revenge. People think revenge is loud. They think it is screaming and throwing clothes out on the lawn. They think it is keying cars and making scenes in restaurants. But that is not revenge. That is just a tantrum. True revenge is quiet. True revenge is patient. True revenge is letting your enemy believe he has won right up until the moment the ground opens up beneath his feet. Liam was sleeping on a trap door. He was dreaming of a corner office and a $200,000 salary. He was dreaming of the day he would divorce me and take half my fortune. He was sleeping so soundly because he thought I was stupid. He thought I was safe. I turned my head and looked at his silhouette in the dark. Sleep well, Liam, I thought. Dream big. Because when you wake up, the dream is over, and the nightmare begins. I closed my eyes. and for the first time in months, I slept the deep and dreamless sleep of the innocent. The alarm went off at 6 o'clock. It was Thursday. It was the day of the execution. I woke up before the alarm finished its first ring. I silenced it instantly. I did not want to wake Liam. I wanted his morning to be as ordinary as possible. I slipped out of bed. I went to the bathroom and showered. I dressed in my best power suit. It was a navy blue Armani with a sharp cut. It was armor. I went downstairs. I made coffee. I drank a cup standing at the kitchen island looking out at the backyard. The landscaping crew was coming today. It was part of the sale contract. The new owners wanted the hedges trimmed. Liam came down at 7:30. He looked groggy. He poured himself a cup of coffee. "Big day?" he asked. "Huge," I said. "I have meetings all morning." He nodded. He did not ask what meetings. He did not care. "I am playing golf with Tyler this afternoon," he said. "I probably will be late for dinner. Do not wait up." "I will not," I said. I picked up my briefcase. It contained the final divorce petition. It contained the forged loan documents. It contained the keys to my new apartment. I walked to the door. "Bye, babe," Liam called out from the kitchen. I stopped. I turned around. I looked at him one last time. He was leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone. He was wearing boxer shorts and a t-shirt that said "Boss Life." He looked small. He looked pathetic. He looked like a man who had wasted every opportunity he had ever been given. "Goodbye, Liam," I said. I walked out the door. I closed it softly behind me. I got into my car. I backed out of the driveway. I watched the house disappear in my rearview mirror. I did not feel sad. I felt like I had just escaped a burning building. I drove downtown to the title company. Claire was waiting for me in the lobby. She looked impeccable. "The buyers are in the conference room," she said. "Everything is ready." We walked in. The Johnsons were there. They looked excited. They looked nervous. They were holding hands. I smiled at them. "Congratulations," I said. "I hope you will be very happy there." "Thank you, Mrs. Vance," the husband said. "We love the house. It has such good energy." I signed the papers. My hand did not shake. I signed my name on the deed transfer. I signed my name on the bill of sale. I signed my name on the affidavit of title. With every signature, I was severing a tie. I was cutting a cord. The title agent pushed a final document toward me. "This is the wire transfer authorization," she said. $2,700,000. Where do you want it sent? I handed her a slip of paper. It had the routing number for the Harper Expansion Trust. "Here," I said. She typed the numbers into her computer. She hit enter. "Done," she said. "The funds should hit your account within the hour." I stood up. I shook hands with the buyers. I shook hands with Claire. "Is that it?" I asked. "That is it," Claire said. "You are free." I walked out of the building. The sun was shining. The air smelled of exhaust and coffee and freedom. I got into my car. I did not turn right toward the suburbs. I turned left toward the river. I drove to a high-rise building on the waterfront. It was a building made of glass and steel. It was modern. It was sleek. It had a doorman. I parked in the underground garage. I took the elevator to the 20th floor. I unlocked the door to apartment 20B. I stepped inside. The apartment was furnished but sparse. It had white walls and light wood floors. It had floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the Ohio River. It did not have heavy antiques. It did not have memories of deception. It was clean. It was mine. I walked to the window. I looked down at the city. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from the bank. Wire transfer received $2,700,000. I smiled. I checked the time. It was 10:30 in the morning. Liam was probably just getting ready for his golf game. He was probably putting on his cleats. He was probably thinking about what lie he would tell me later to explain why he was late. He did not know that his key would not work tonight. He did not know that his wife was gone. He did not know that the war had already been won, and he had slept through the surrender. I took a deep breath. I filled my lungs with the cool air of the apartment. I was alone, and for the first time in 3 years, I was not lonely. I was complete. It was exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was sitting in a Eames lounge chair in my new apartment overlooking the Ohio River. The water below was brown and churning, but from this height it looked peaceful. It looked like a ribbon of hammered bronze reflecting the afternoon sun. My laptop was balanced on my knees. The screen was bright. The cursor blinked in the recipient field of a new email. I typed Liam Vance. I typed Eleanor Vance. I typed Brody Vance. I wanted the whole family to witness the dissection. I had spent the last 3 hours composing the text. I had revised it. I had polished it. I had removed every adjective that sounded emotional and replaced it with a noun that sounded like a gavel hitting a desk. This was not a breakup letter. It was a foreclosure notice on a fraudulent life. I decided to send it in 4 parts. I wanted the blows to land consecutively. I wanted him to read one and think it was the worst thing that could happen, only to open the next and realize he had not even hit the bottom yet. I opened the first draft. Subject: notice to vacate Liam. The house at 42 Willow Lane has been sold. The closing took place this morning at 10 o'clock. The deed has been transferred. The funds have been wired to a trust you cannot access. The new owners take possession tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. However, per the contract I signed, the premises must be vacated by 5 o'clock this afternoon to allow for a final cleaning crew. You have 3 hours to remove your personal effects. Anything left on the property after 5 o'clock will be considered abandoned property and disposed of by the new owners. The locks have not been changed yet, but the security codes have. Do not try to disable the alarm. The police have been notified that the property is under new ownership. I took a breath. My finger hovered over the send button. I pictured him on the golf course. I pictured him laughing with Tyler. I pictured him checking his phone. I clicked send. I waited 1 minute. Then I opened the second draft. Subject: regarding Kayla. I know about Kayla. I know she is 24. I know she works at the dental office in the Highlands. I know you have been seeing her for 14 months. I know you told her I was a cold workaholic. I know you used the supplementary credit card to pay for her apartment and your hotel rooms. Attached are 42 photographs documenting your infidelity. These have also been sent to your divorce attorney as evidence of marital misconduct. Do not bother lying to her anymore. She has been blind copied on this email. I attached the file from Saul. It was a heavy file. It was a digital brick. I clicked send. I waited another minute. I took a sip of sparkling water. The bubbles tasted sharp on my tongue. I opened the third draft. Subject: the exit plan and financial fraud. I know about the plan. I found the note on your old iPad. I know you called me a fat hippo. I know you planned to wait for the prenup to expire in 6 months so you could claim 50% of my assets. I know you never loved me, but that is irrelevant now. What is relevant is the attachment below. It is a copy of the loan document you signed with the lending agency in the West End. It shows my signature as a guarantor. We both know I did not sign that. We both know you forged it to cover your gambling debts. I have the metadata. I have the testimony of the notary you bribed. This is first-degree forgery and theft by deception. It carries a mandatory prison sentence of 5 to 10 years. I attached the PDF of the forged loan and the screenshot of his exit plan list. I clicked send. Then I opened the final draft. The ultimatum. Subject: the choice. Here is your reality. You are homeless. You are broke. You are exposed. The money from the house is gone. My business assets are locked in a trust. You get nothing because you contributed nothing. However, I am willing to offer you a choice. You can contest the divorce. You can try to fight for money. If you do, I will hand the forgery evidence to the district attorney immediately. I will press charges. I will testify against you. You will go to prison. Or you can sign the uncontested divorce papers my lawyer has prepared. You can walk away with your clothes and your car and your freedom. You take your debts with you. You take your shame with you. But you stay out of jail. Those are your options. You have 24 hours to decide. I read it one last time. It was brutal. It was fair. I looked at the button. For 3 years, I had walked on eggshells. I had swallowed my words. I had apologized for taking up space. I had carried the weight of his ego and his mother's judgment and my own insecurity. It was a weight that had crushed the breath out of me. I pressed send, and as the whoosh sound echoed in the quiet apartment, I felt the weight vanish. It did not slide off slowly. It evaporated. I sat back in the chair. I expected to feel triumphant. I expected to feel a surge of adrenaline or a manic desire to laugh. But I felt nothing like that. I felt a profound and absolute peace. It was the peace of a surgeon who has successfully cut out a tumor. It was the peace of a structural engineer who has demolished a condemned building before it could collapse on anyone. I closed the laptop. I stood up and walked to the window. The river flowed on. The sun continued to shine. The world had not ended, but Liam's world had just been extinguished. I picked up my phone. I went to the settings. I blocked Liam. I blocked Eleanor. I blocked Brody. I blocked Kayla. I set the phone on the kitchen counter. It began to buzz almost immediately. It vibrated against the marble surface like an angry hornet. The screen lit up with a call from unknown number. Liam was borrowing a phone. I watched it ring. I did not touch it. 10 minutes later, my work cell phone rang. It was Saul. I picked it up. "Report," I said. "It is chaos, Harper," Saul said. His voice sounded satisfied. "He is at the house. He must have left the golf course the second he got the first email. He is in the driveway screaming at the front door." "Are the new owners there?" I asked. "Yes," Saul said, "and they brought their contractor to measure for carpets. They are terrified. They called the police." "Good," I said. "The police just arrived," Saul continued. "2 squad cars. They are talking to Liam now. He is trying to show them his ID. He is trying to tell them he lives there. But the new owners have the deed. They have the closing papers." "What is he doing?" I asked. "He is crying," Saul said. "He is actually crying. He is throwing clothes into the back of his Porsche. He looks like a wild animal. The neighbors are all out on their porches watching. Mrs. Higgins across the street is recording it on her phone." I smiled. Mrs. Higgins was the neighborhood gossip. By dinner time, the entire homeowners association would know that Liam Vance had been evicted by the police. "Has his mother arrived?" I asked. "She just pulled up," Saul said. "She is screaming at the police officers. She is telling them they cannot treat her son like this. Wait." I heard a pause. I heard Saul shifting the phone. "He is talking to her," Saul said. "I can read his lips. He is telling her about the money. He is telling her the house money is gone." "How does she look?" I asked. "She looks like she is going to faint," Saul said. "She just realized her $50,000 loan is gone." She grabbed his arm. "She is shaking him. She is not hugging him, Harper. She is attacking him." I closed my eyes and pictured it. The woman who had laughed at me was now realizing that her investment had crashed. She had backed the wrong horse. "Keep watching," I said. "Let me know when he leaves." "He is leaving now," Saul said. "The police are escorting his car out of the driveway. He has nowhere to go, Harper." "He has his brother," I said, "or his mistress." "I do not think so," Saul said. "You might want to check social media." I opened my laptop again. I logged into Facebook. My feed was exploding. Kayla had received the email, and unlike me, she did not value discretion. She valued attention. She had posted the photos I sent. She had posted a long and rambling diatribe. "I cannot believe I wasted 14 months on this liar," she wrote. "He told me he was divorced. He told me he was a millionaire. He told me his wife was crazy. Turns out he was living off her money and driving a car she paid for. He is a fraud and a cheater. Do not trust Liam Vance. He is broke and he is homeless." The post had been shared 40 times in 20 minutes. The comments were vicious. People love a villain, and Liam had just become the villain of the day in Louisville. Then I opened the website for the Business Tribune. The article Veronica had arranged was the lead story on the homepage. Titan of Industry, How Harper Vance Built a Construction Empire. There was a photo of me on the screen. It was taken last month at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. I was wearing a white hard hat and a structured black blazer. I was pointing at a steel beam. I looked commanding. I looked powerful. I looked like a woman who shaped the skyline. The headline below the photo read, "While others speculate, Harper Vance executes." A look at the strategic genius behind the city's newest expansion. I looked at the two images side by side on my screens. On one tab there was Liam. He was being described as a homeless fraudster by a 24-year-old dental receptionist. He was being escorted by police away from a house he thought he owned. He was holding trash bags filled with his Boss Life t-shirts. On the other tab there was me. I was a titan. I was a genius. I was a leader. The contrast was stark. It was violent. He had tried to reduce me to a body. He had tried to reduce me to a fat hippo. But the world did not see a hippo. They saw a tycoon. And they saw him for exactly what he was. A small and petty thief who had tried to steal fire from the sun and had burned his hands to ash. I closed the tabs. I closed the laptop. The sun was beginning to set over the river. The sky was turning a bruised purple. I poured myself a glass of wine. I stood on the balcony and let the wind hit my face. The execution was complete. The guillotine had fallen, and I had not even gotten blood on my shoes. 3 weeks after the emails were sent, I sat across from Liam for the last time. We were in the conference room at Diane's office. The mahogany table that had once held the strategy for his destruction now held the paperwork for his surrender. Liam looked terrible. He had lost weight, but not in a healthy way. His skin was sallow, and his eyes were rimmed with red. He was wearing a suit that looked like it had been slept in. It probably had been. He picked up the pen. His hand shook. He did not look at me. He looked only at the document that stood between him and a prison cell. "I kept my promise," I said. My voice was devoid of emotion. "The district attorney has not received the evidence of the forgery. As long as you sign this and disappear, that file remains in my safe." Liam swallowed hard. He signed his name on the dissolution of marriage decree. He signed away his claim to the house. He signed away his claim to alimony. He signed away his right to ever speak my name in public again. With one scratch of ink, he admitted that he was nothing. Diane took the papers. She checked the signatures. "It is done," she said. Liam stood up. He looked at me then. For a fleeting second, I saw a flash of the man I had married. I saw the charm that had fooled me, but it was dim now. It was like a light bulb that had burned out. "What happens to me now?" he asked. His voice was a whisper. "That is not my problem, Liam," I said. I learned later from Saul that Liam had moved to a grim apartment complex near the airport. He was working at a warehouse loading trucks. It was ironic. He was lifting boxes in a building owned by one of my competitors. He had lost his soft hands. He had lost his pretensions. Eleanor had cut him off completely. When she realized the $50,000 she had loaned him was gone, she chose her remaining money over her son. She refused to take his calls. She told her bridge club that she was the victim of a con artist's son. She was alone in her big house with her antiques and her bitterness. She had no one to cook for her. She had no one to manipulate. I walked out of the office and into the elevator. I waited for the guilt to hit me. I waited to feel bad about reducing a man to manual labor and poverty. But the guilt never came. I realized that I had not destroyed his life. I had simply removed the scaffolding that was holding it up. That scaffolding was me. It was my money. It was my labor. It was my love. Without me, he was just gravity taking its course. I had not ruined him. I had just let him fall. 6 months later, I met Sloane for lunch. We went to a new restaurant on the waterfront. It was bright and airy and filled with people who were making things happen. "You look incredible," Sloane said. She did not just mean my clothes. I felt incredible. I had started going to the gym again, but this time it was different. I was not on the treadmill trying to shrink myself. I was not counting calories to fit into a smaller dress size. I was lifting weights. I was pushing heavy iron. I wanted to be strong. I wanted to feel the power in my legs and my back. I had stopped hiding my body. I wore a sleeveless dress that showed off my arms. I was still a size 14 and I did not care. My body was the vessel that carried my ambition. It was the engine that drove my success. It deserved respect. My company had grown by 30% in 2 quarters. We had broken ground on the downtown expansion. The trust fund I had established was performing beyond expectations. I ordered a steak. I ate it with gusto. Sloane raised her glass of wine. To the new Harper, she said. To the real Harper, I corrected. I spent my weekends alone now, and I loved it. I sat in my apartment and read books. I drank wine. I watched the river. I did not have to manage anyone's ego. I did not have to apologize for my success. I did not have to make myself small so someone else could feel big. I thought about the years I had spent sacrificing. I thought about the emotional labor I had poured into Liam and Eleanor. I had thought that sacrifice was a virtue. I had thought that being a good wife meant setting myself on fire to keep him warm. I was wrong. Sacrifice is only a virtue if it is appreciated. Otherwise, it is just waste. It is self-destruction disguised as duty. I had learned the hardest lesson of all. You cannot love someone into being a good person. You cannot pay enough to make someone value you. My value did not come from being a wife. It did not come from being a provider. It came from my integrity. It came from my resilience. It came from the fact that when my world shattered, I did not sweep up the pieces. I melted them down and forged a sword. Sloane smiled at me across the table. "You know," she said, "I think he did you a favor." I laughed. It was a genuine sound. "He did," I said. "He set me free." That evening, I stood on the balcony of my apartment. The sun was setting over the Ohio River. The sky was a masterpiece of orange and violet. The city lights were starting to twinkle in the twilight. I held a glass of vintage red wine in my hand. It was a bottle I had been saving for a special occasion. This was the occasion. I looked down at the rushing water. I thought about the woman who had stood in the hallway 6 months ago. I thought about the woman who had frozen when she heard the words, "fat hippo." I felt a wave of gratitude for her. I was grateful that she had been hurt. I was grateful that she had been humiliated, because that pain had been the fuel. That humiliation had been the catalyst. If Liam had been a better liar, I might still be there. I might still be trapped in that golden cage, buying organic blueberries and apologizing for my existence. He had tried to break me. He had tried to use my insecurities as a weapon, but he had made a fatal error. He forgot that diamonds are made under pressure. He applied the pressure, and instead of cracking, I crystallized. I raised my glass to the horizon. "Here is to you, Harper," I whispered to the wind. I drank the wine. It was rich and complex. I was alone. I was wealthy. I was powerful. And most importantly, I was awake. The nightmare was over. The dreamer had woken up. And the reality she had built was far more beautiful than any dream. I turned back to the warm light of my living room. I had work to do tomorrow. I had a city to build. And nobody was ever going to stand in my way again. Lesson learned. True revenge is not about making the other person suffer. It's about refusing to let their betrayal define your future. For years, I believed that my value as a woman lay in how much I could sacrifice my career, my body, my pride to keep a family together. I was wrong. Dignity is not negotiable. The most powerful thing a woman can do is reclaim the energy she once wasted on ungrateful people and invest it back into herself. When you finally stand tall in your own worth, the people who tried to keep you small simply cease to matter.